Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here. Let's do this. It's episode 3 of Questions for Jeff. We're going to start with questions from my patrons on my Patreon page. If you guys don't know about that, you can find out more with the link right here. I like to take the patrons' questions first because they're paying to play. But let's get started. I'm going to start with a question from Franklin San Giovanni. Question is there anything to recognize harmonically when starting songs on a 4 chord, and why does it sound so good? Well, I don't know why it sounds so good. I guess that's up to you. It's a personal preference. Maybe because it's a little bit unexpected. At the same time, though, this kind of goes to the first part of your question. Starting songs on the 4 chord, you don't really know it's the 4 chord until you get to a different chord because you don't have any context yet. Now, maybe you start with an intro that sets up the key, and then you go to the 4 chord for the top of the A section, something like that. Then you would know it's a 4 chord, and that might sound kind of cool because it's unexpected. And oftentimes it's those unexpected harmonic shifts and melodic changes that catch our ear and are exciting and fun to listen to. So that could be the reason. Let's go on. We got a question here from Jack McCabe about arranging. Is it okay for instruments to overlap in range, such as guitar and keyboard voicing? Should they be spaced apart from one to another, or some overlap okay? And then he asks about a singer's melody line being alone with space in its range, or can it overlap with the keyboard? So the question really here is about doubling instruments. Is it okay for instruments to overlap when you're arranging? And it's not like there's a rule for this. It's kind of, it's a decision you have to make based on the sound that it creates. If you want to play it safe, then yeah, you might not want to have a singer singing with a piano player playing right in the same range, because then you run the risk of like a harsh dissonance. If, let's say the singer is singing the minor third on a minor chord and you're playing the 9, that's only a half step apart. So you have to watch out for those kinds of instances, and a little space can prevent those problems from occurring. All that being said, it's a decision. So maybe you want that minor 9, or maybe you want that minor second there between the 9 and the 3. Another thing to consider is you get a different color when you have instruments that double one another. So a guitar and a piano, if they're playing the same note, that's going to create kind of an interesting color. It's a new instrument in a way, where you have piano on top of guitar. That's a whole new sound. So that could be something that you're going for. One other thing to consider is that when you do double notes, you strengthen their functions in a way. So if you want the third to be a bit more present, then doubling it is going to do that. Let's say you really wanted to emphasize that you're going from a 4 to a minor 4. Maybe that would be an instance where you double the third and then you double the minor third to really accentuate that change in harmony. It really does vary depending on the situation. So as always, you want to use your ears and keep in mind that you're going to be creating different colors when you double notes. You also open yourself up to tuning issues. That's something to be aware of. For instance, if you have a singer singing the same unison line as like a pianist, or even more problematic, a wind player, where there's a lot more fluctuation in intonation, that could lead to some tuning problems because you're playing the same note. So you got to watch out for that. But if you're using good musicians and they're aware of what's happening, then you can usually get away with pretty much anything. It's just a matter of being decisive and having some intention with whatever you're writing. Hunter Matthews asks, I'm trying to work on developing longer lines in my jazz improv, but whenever I try to improvise a long line of eighth notes, I always seem to stumble. Any tips? Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, you want to slow down. When you're playing longer lines of eighth notes, that's more information, so you need more time to think. And if you're playing faster, then that means you have to think faster. So if you are stumbling, that means you're having to think too fast and you're not quite ready for that tempo yet with those long lines of eighth notes. So first thing you have to do is slow down. Then you'll have a little bit more time to think and process the information. Now, the other thing that really helps is thinking ahead, so anticipating what you're going to play next. A little bit of autopilot needs to be going on for that to happen. So you have to be thinking maybe a couple of beats ahead of where you are. What I like to do, especially on faster tunes when I don't have a lot of time to think, well, first of all, I'm always trying to play by ear whenever possible. But in instances where I do need to rely a bit more on theory to kind of get me through, I will think ahead to the next chord in order to make sure my line is consistent and doesn't stumble, like you said. So thinking about the chord that's coming up next rather than the chord that you're on. And that way you're always one step ahead of the game. Really effective. and worth practicing. Just thinking about that next chord. Okay, I'm going to take some questions now from my Instagram channel. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, you can do so. My username or handle or whatever it's called, it's right here. I hope to see you on Instagram, some interesting content getting posted there, and got some questions. So let's jump right in. Okay, question here from Hugo Sunberg Music. How did you learn music production? School, YouTube, private lessons? Music production, I pretty much just taught myself with YouTube videos, stuff I found online, a lot of listening and trying to copy stuff. They weren't really teaching music production in the schools that I went to. I know there are music production classes out there in colleges, but not in the ones that I went to, which is fine. I was doing things like composition and improvisation. So yeah, as I said, a lot of YouTube videos, just random stuff that I've read online and experimenting a lot. It took a long time for me to feel like I could do somewhat good production and mixing and all that. I still have a lot of work to do, but you know, the loops of the day are certainly a great challenge for me to make sure that I can pump this stuff out quickly, and being able to listen back and hear my music and kind of track the progress is a very helpful way that I found that helps me improve my production. Okay, here's a question from the Nisi Mand, I think. Where do I start learning to play and improvise jazz? I listen to a lot of jazz, but I don't know where to start. So yeah, the first place to start is just by listening like you're doing, and then trying to transcribe, meaning figure out how to play what you're listening to on your instrument. Singing solos is going to be extremely effective as well. And then eventually you can start learning the theory. But the most important thing is that you're listening, you're singing what you're hearing, and then you're playing what you're singing. That's really all you need to do for starters. So start there. Okay, Uli Sachs asks, can you be or sound good playing just pentatonic scales? That's an interesting question. You know, blues guitarists pretty much just play pentatonic scales and they sound great. It's more about how you play it versus what you play. You can make great music with just 5 notes. It is possible. It depends a little bit on the style of music you're playing. If you're really into playing bebop, the pentatonic scale might not be the most appropriate, but there's so many situations where you can just get away with pentatonic scales. Again, it's about how you play and how you play what you play and what you do with those notes that makes the difference. Okay, question here from Brian Zhu. What was the routine you used to learn improv? When did it start clicking for you? It can get overwhelming for aspiring musicians to hear about all the stuff that is required to do improvisation. Yeah, there's a ton of scales to memorize, theory, transcriptions, all that stuff. When it started clicking for me, well, I don't even know if it started to click for me yet. I feel like there's still so much that I need to work on. And I think every musician feels that way. It's going to be a constant journey. I feel like once you get to a place where you feel like you've achieved everything you've wanted to achieve musically, then suddenly it opens up this whole new section of stuff that you want to be practicing and getting better at. So I remember when I was in high school practicing and I wanted to sound, you know, like a bebopper, and then I got some bebop vocabulary under my fingers, and suddenly I was like, oh, okay, what's next? So I don't know if there's ever an arrival where it starts to click, but I will say that once I was able to start playing a little bit more what I heard in my head and get that under my fingers and get some immediacy there, that really made a difference. So I'd really recommend you focusing on ear training and making sure that you can sing and play and have that connection between your instrument, whether it's saxophone or piano or guitar or whatever, and your ear. That connection is so important. So that's also going to help you with sifting through all the information that's out there, right? There's the scales, the theory, the chords, the arpeggios. All that stuff is all well and good, but you need to have the ear to drive. The ear and what you hear in your head should drive the boat, not the theory, not the information. The information supports what you hear, but it doesn't drive the boat. So just make sure you have your priorities in order, and I think that's going to help you get to that place where things are starting to click. I'm going to try to keep this episode a little bit shorter than the other one, so I'll do one more question. This one's from Anthony Tam24. What is your best method for approaching rhythm? Do you prefer to feel it or count it with numbers? As a terrible rhythmic musician, I need help improving it. You know, I feel like I have a lot of work to do on rhythm too. It is the most important part of playing music, because you can get away with playing wrong notes if your rhythm is good, but you can't get away with playing not wrong rhythms, but with bad time, even if your notes are great. So rhythm is extremely important. You don't want to think about numbers too much, because then you're not going to be feeling the groove as much as you should. What I think really helps, I've been practicing this lately, is practicing with a metronome on beats that are not where you'd expect them to be. So, you know, most people put the metronome on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4. But what if you started putting it on only beats 2 and 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be a bit challenging for some people. If you're able to do that, the next step would be to put it on some off beats, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And suddenly it's going to get more and more challenging. You can put it on maybe just one of the beats, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Having the metronome click on these beats that you wouldn't normally put it on is going to be a challenge to practice with, and it's going to force you to internalize the rhythm. I did a video once about external and internal rhythm. I'll see if I can link that up. But I think using the metronome in that interesting way will help you internalize rhythm and feel rhythm, so you don't have to think about it as much. It's all about those subdivisions. That really is what makes the difference between good and bad time. It's feeling the subdivisions. One other thing, once you're able to do eighth notes like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you can start doing the 16th note subdivisions like 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and or just do the 1 E, or just do the E, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. And that's going to be the most challenging. And then as you speed up the tempo, it's going to get even harder. So that's a great thing to practice. You can practice just scales with the metronome on those awkward beats. It's a really effective way to improve your time. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for the questions. I will get some more next time. And that'll be episode 4 of Questions for Jeff. So again, if you don't follow me on Instagram, please check me out there. I'm going to take a lot of questions from Instagram and, of course, Patreon. Thank you all to the patrons out there. Really appreciate the support. We're coming up on 100,000 subscribers here for YouTube. So thank you all for watching this, for everybody who subscribed. If you haven't subscribed yet, let's push it over to the 100K. And I can't thank you enough for all the support. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. And I'll see you next time in the next video. Thanks for watching.